Hey guys, what's up? Stock Retail coming back to you. Boy, there was a lot going on today. And so I'm going to go ahead and cover some of these things. Was kind of firing off posts on X, so some of you would have seen some of this information, but just add a little color commentary to it. And then if you don't follow me there, some of this will be perhaps new to you. But I'm literally going to talk about the day in Bitcoin, Japan, Metaplanet, strategy, Gamestop, AMC, lots going on all those. Um, well, let's just get to it. So, I had posted on X, and I want to explain something about strategy because I think this matters to really understand what's going on and why I think some of the shorts have it wrong, frankly. And I think it's worth doing deeper DD to understand strategy. So I had posted, uh, gosh, it's been a wild couple days. I think I posted this morning, but I know I was thinking about it last night, so I'm a little fuzzy brained on when I posted this. But somewhere on X, I posted this, I think today. Um, that Saylor is basically bringing color to a black and white financial world. I do genuinely love movies. That's why it's been kind of fun to be in the AMC journey. And I don't know if you've all seen, obviously, the classic Wizard of Oz. Um, you may not know that's one of the first movies ever to use Technicolor, and it's certainly one of the biggest of its time to sort of embrace this sort of technology at the time called Technicolor. And so what they did is the first, I don't know, 20, 30 minutes of the movie are, it's kind of almost sepia, but it's pretty much black and white. And then Dorothy goes to Oz, and suddenly there's color. And why was I drawing out that comparison? Basically, what's been happening, if you look at the huge financial players who have just absolutely gobbled up Sailor's Bitcoin bonds. So you had like Allianz, like Morgan Stanley, Goldman Sachs. Name some of the biggest financial institutions you can think about, and they wanted these bonds and gobbled them right up. And so what you'll do if you study this is he's bringing volatility, and he's bringing instruments that these, in some cases, like Allianz is a good example. You know, they're basically in the insurance industry for the most part, and there are all kinds of regulations and what they can and can't invest in, and even their own internal policies. And so he has given these institutions a way to access markets they didn't otherwise access, and to access volatility they didn't necessarily have. If they had, that's why I'm saying kind of black and white vanilla instruments, and now they are playing, with a lot of expertise in financial instruments that he has now enabled for them. So the even the volatility he's offering is a value to many, and so that is, just don't sleep on that, and we all need to study that more. Um, even I need to go a lot deeper to really understand everything he's doing. But I'm just telling you, don't just take, when Jim Chano says, well, strategy is trading at some kind of multiple to Bitcoin, so therefore, short strategy and buy Bitcoin. That was Chanos' thesis. And I think it's just dead wrong because he hasn't done enough deep DD on the whole point of what Saylor's doing. And, again, you see it by the significant amount of demand for what he's doing. So, more to come on that. Not to mention Bitcoin really becoming, a far more respected currency, let's say, than fiat. But we'll come back to that. So just some other interesting things. I'll fly by these, a couple things on Bitcoin. So today, a friend of mine had posted this, and so then I kind of reposted it as well. Just interesting. So there's a website. If you go on X, you'll see this. There's a website that in 2013 posted some of the Bitcoin source code from 2008. So you can just see I'm showing you part of that here. And just cool to see a lot in there about time chain. We call it blockchain, but perhaps Satoshi was really calling it time chain. And there are some folks who've given what's the word I'm looking for? Speeches on that, basically. And so you can find some really interesting takes on that, and just the notion of time chain, which Bitcoin really, in a way, is. And then, of course, learning all about the Genesis block if you haven't learned about that. There's just some cool stuff. So for those of you who want to geek out a little bit, either find my post or just kind of screenshot this, and you can Google some of the information on here. You'll find this. I had posted the link on X. Man, Bitcoin above 110K today. Wild day here. I'm going to pull up my phone, see what it is as I'm recording this. I think it had fallen back a little bit. Just a minute. Yeah, so a little bit above, well, almost back at 110 right now. Actually, it looks like my phone is frozen. Maybe my Wi-Fi sometimes cycles in and out. So not sure as I record this where we're at, but right before I recorded, we were at 110K, which is pretty wild. And you can just see, I posted a few times, if you go back and look at the 1 year view, and you'll see there was kind of the shelf of being around, let's say between like 104 to 107K for a while. And now we're kind of starting to really run above that, and it may run a little ways. And so my point to people was, I've been saying probably for a few weeks now, like, look out, here it comes. And, if you followed me a while, then you know about all of the sovereigns, so governments who are buying Bitcoin, all of the significant institutions who are buying Bitcoin, all of the Bitcoin treasury company, you just hear how huge this is. And so there is both a supply and a demand issue, and just a global adoption going on. We're at a really historical moment right now. So just very interesting to see. And when I was originally going to put this on, it was 109, and I already had to change the slide. And so the point was going to be, I was going to say, speaking of 109, maybe you remember Roaring Kitty's post with the Time magazine, right? There's 109 and 420. And as I've seen a lot developing with GameStop and Bitcoin, I've just been kind of interested to think through a little more. There's various decodes I felt like were from that, and I'm not suggesting what I'm showing you here is connected to those, but it was more a curiosity thing. And I want to show you, for those of you that want to kind of research more, you can go find websites and actually look up specific blocks of Bitcoin, for example. This is very interesting. I went and looked at block 109 and block 420, and you will see that effectively you can even find what wallet they went to. Like, here's the wallet, and you can see, like, okay, this address has transacted blah, blah, times, 5 times here on this one, but has sent a total value of 0 Bitcoin. So actually what's interesting is on January 11th, where's that? Maybe you can see here that I'm hovering around January 11th, 2009. So speaking of 109, guys, probably Satoshi could have been, there were a few other people he was working with, mined these 50 Bitcoin. Man, can you imagine, guys? If just sitting on 50 Bitcoin, you can see at the time I pulled this, it was saying that's $5.3 million. There's these 50, and then you can see quite a few digits, and then 2229 Bitcoin sitting in this wallet that have sat there since 2009, have never moved. Very interesting to see that. And then you can go, same thing, you can find Bitcoin block 420, and it is not the same wallet, but the same kind of deal. It got mined 2 days later. So this was mined on January 13th of 2009, and has sat in that wallet all this time. So if you want to know more about Bitcoin 109 or Bitcoin 420, I also went down a path today on some basically improvement code, BIP 109 and 420 today. So just, we're all out there trying to figure out sometimes what Kitty was saying. I've got my own points of view about that. But interesting to see, there are wallets out there who have held Bitcoin and never moved it since 2009. You talk about hodling. All right, let's come back. I'm going to talk a little bit about, the fact that shorts have been, shorting Bitcoin strategy companies and why that's not a great idea. I told you in the last video about the short network that's been gathering around MicroStrategy and how that's actually a lot of the same players who are connected to AMC. Maybe you saw today that Metaplanet ran real hard. I think at one point it was up like 150+% or something. I can't remember. So Metaplanet was up very high today, and it is the most shorted stock in Japan. So Metaplanet is a Japanese company who has a Bitcoin treasury strategy, is holding a lot of Bitcoin, and the shorts thought it would be a good idea to short Metaplanet, and that's not working out real well for them. And you can see the short interest is very, very high. Bitcoin is flying, so obviously that's increasing the value of Metaplanet. Just very interesting to see. And especially, take a look at my playlist here on YouTube called The Great Unwinding, or take a look at the hashtag The Great Unwinding from me on X, and you'll see why Bitcoin running hard and various companies connected to Bitcoin squeezing it has me very excited for us in AMC and GameStop. So take a look at that. Sometimes there's a certain amount of thesis and a certain amount of tinfoil wrapped up in that. But uh, I mentioned the last video, so check that out on the network gathering around MicroStrategy. I won't kind of belabor that point. But so I just want to really, really encourage you all to watch another video of mine that's old, and then I'm going to get back to news. I had reposted this on X today, or you're here on YouTube. You can just go find this. This is in that The Great Unwinding playlist, so it'd be really quick for you to find it. It's from March of 2024. And I just talked about how fiat currencies would basically always go down, so Bitcoin will kind of always go up. And just the fact that Bitcoin's supply is constrained and all of that. And so I just want to encourage you that if you have not been in Bitcoin and you're saying, man, it's already 110K, I don't know if I'm too late. I have come to the conclusion personally, this is a personal philosophy, there is no late to Bitcoin. There's just when you come to it. Now, don't just listen to some guy on the internet. You need to go do DD. And you also need to, if you watch that video, you'll find out that I'm talking about holding Bitcoin for years and decades and even generations. It's what I'm telling my children. I have my oldest is 19, and I have another teenager in the house, and then I have an elementary age kid. I have 3 kids. And I am just telling them, put little bits of money away and just pretend you don't have it. And then when you're older, you're going to be very happy you did that. So my oldest son has done exactly that. He has a little bit of Bitcoin. He's only 19, so there's only so much he has. But I guess I just want you to know that it's the same thing I'm telling my family. So go watch that debasement video. I think it will really be informative if you haven't started your DD on Bitcoin, and I would hope it will send you on a path of doing your own DD. And don't just, there's no trust me bros where I'm concerned. You guys know I don't do that. Speaking of Japan, let's come back to that. I wanted you guys to know that, so here's a post I posted more than a year ago. I guess it got cut off of what date it was. I think it might have been January of 2024. I'd have to go back and look. But I know it's more than a year ago when I posted about Japan, the Bank of Japan, and how much they had in the way of liabilities. And so I just want you guys to know that this has been out there cooking for a while. And this is not just the Japanese yen carry trade that you'll hear a lot about, but do research that. Certainly Kitty, I think, was suggesting some things. If you remember one of the graphics that he had posted, and everybody has kind of talked about that and sort of the Japanese yen carry trade and a lot of that. So definitely the JPY carry trade is a big deal. Side note, I think, I've shared with you guys, I worked for Nike. I went to Tokyo many times. I think maybe even 30 times. I have to go back and remember. I kind of lost count. And I remember times when it was 80 yen to the dollar. So right now, last I checked, it was around 143 yen to the dollar. So that made it very cheap for people to do this sort of yen swap carry trade. And the problem is, as the yen moves the other way, and as everything that's sort of boiling over in Japan, and the Bank of Japan has all kinds of decisions to make, it is flipping people upside down on that Japanese yen carry trade. And so just keep track of that and keep track of the US dollar. So I post every now and then too on how the dollar is doing against the euro and against the yen. So for example, as the euro has strengthened against the dollar, I think we're at around $1.13 to the euro, whereas for a while we were at parity. That means AMC's revenue, for example, in Europe will actually be higher because the euro, when they translate their sales, will buy more dollars. So we'll start to see some what you call FX tailwinds for AMC. But the point is, you can see here from this post, Bank of Japan had heavy liabilities. At the time I posted this, it was over $5 trillion in liabilities. So, that was kind of a something that needed to be unwound for a long time. That's been out there. And so you could have found me posting about that. If you followed me on X, you would have known about this more than a year ago. And so I'm just bringing it back out, though, so you kind of see that, yes, there's the yen carry trade, but it's all related to a lot more things going on. Two more quick side notes, then I'm going to talk AMC and the box office, and then we're going to be done. So we're almost already there. More news that had come out recently, I think this might be about a week old now, from the St. Louis Fed. So you can go find this on their website. Basically, the percentage of credit card debt that is 30 days or more delinquent. All sympathy to people who are struggling. You guys know that I've had some tight finances for a while. And I really appreciate some people who helped on my Buy Me a Coffee site just awesome. Thank you for being a community. Thank you for coming around me. And, I will pay that forward as I get back, kind of get my finances back on track. But here's the point. Some people, are really struggling, and, you know, the credit card delinquencies, what I wanted to show you, and I just think this matters in terms of markets and all that we're going to be going through, and frankly points back to why Bitcoin is probably going to continue to do very well. You can basically see here was kind of 2011, well, 2010 maybe. Obviously coming off the financial crisis, so here's 2008, and you can see we're basically back to those kind of all-time highs. These are each just different cuts of the data, but all of them back at that sort of 2009 to 2011 zone. And just saying that the U.S. consumer is struggling. There's a lot going on. So when you see, setting politics aside, this administration has talked about obviously reducing tax burdens on lower income people. I think that is going to help. And again, setting politics aside, there's been discussion on capping credit card interest rates. If we're at people being delinquent and credit card interest for some are 30, 40%, those are kind of almost loan shark numbers. And so this kind of matters. But I just want you to know in terms of markets that this could start to, it's just one more tension point in the overall system and something to keep watch on. So let's switch to AMC and Gamestop a little bit. And I'm going to mostly switch to AMC here, but this I know applies to Gamestop as well. Recently I had posted, and I just wanted to draw back again, that we were just not wrong. Sometimes we get gaslighted, we get told, we're just conspiracy theorists and all that. But remind yourself what Vlad himself had said. And I've underlined here, he was testifying to Congress, and he had said the same, basically he does believe the ability for the same share to be shorted an indefinite number of times is a real problem, right? So the fact that one share can be shorted an indefinite number of times, and we have tracked a lot for 4 years now, 4.5 years almost, the odds that our shares have been shorted multiple times, and certainly synthetically represented through, say, swaps and tokens and lots of other things, they're very high, right? And so he had said, we simply don't have the ability to properly track what shares have been shorted and how many times. All right, why did I bring this back up? First, it's always good to remind ourselves and not be gaslighted and ground ourselves in, hey, that's right, we're not wrong. But also, if you saw this week, there's bubbling up discussions from the SEC and from Congress on protecting innovation. And what you will find is their innovation for them is going to be basically more like a lack of regulation. They're going to just try to have, don't put any constraints on us so that we can innovate. There's a time and a place for that, right? There was over constraints on some of the crypto industry. I'll call it an industry. But on the flip side, we all know that the financial markets are self-regulated, right? The SEC is a self-regulating body. And think about FINRA and the DTCC and all of this. And it's a circular door, right? You leave the bank and you go to the group that regulates the banks. Or you leave Wall Street and you go to the group that regulates Wall Street. We all know that it's just full of corruption. These guys are just up to the gills in corruption. And so self-regulating when there is, means, motive, and opportunity to make a lot of money through corruption is just obviously the fox guarding the hen house kind of thing, and frankly a lot worse than that. And so I wanted to bring it out because as you hear more and more talk on innovation, here's the point. Vlad saying, hey, we can't even track whether a share has been shorted more than once. You know what the answer to that would be is blockchain, right? So go back to Bitcoin and time chain. One of the beautiful things about Bitcoin is you can't have duplicate transactions. You can't do that. It checks itself. There's real-time auditing, and you track and you know exactly where a block has been, where a coin has been, what is going on with it, who should hold it, etc., etc. You cannot duplicate transactions with proof of work and with the time chain. And so the innovation is there. So I just want you guys to start thinking through the logic of, wait a second, they're saying we need more innovation, and yet they're not placing innovation in place, which has existed since at least 2009, frankly, probably before in terms of just blockchain as a concept, which would basically tie down every share and say, you cannot trade this share more than once. I know this share is in stock retail's hands, or I know this share is in so-and-so's hands, and I know this share has already been shorted. And I know that you didn't locate a share to borrow. these kinds of things. The technology is there, the innovation is there. They don't want innovation, they want more freedom to siphon money out of the system. That is my point of view. And so until you see people like us regulating the industry and not people, directly who leave a bank and are going to go back to a bank after they regulate it, then I'm not taking any of these people seriously. It's all words until I see real innovation that enables transparent and fair markets, right? So that's why I wanted to bring that back out. But let's go back to the fun stuff. All right, Memorial Weekend. And we're going to talk AMC stock in a minute. In fact, that's our next slide, and then we're going to be done too. So Memorial Weekend, if you guys haven't been under a rock or something, you may have missed that. Obviously, you won't have missed this. Lilo and Stitch, Mission Impossible, Final Destination Bloodlines, and actually, of course, Minecraft is still cooking, and Sinners, and The Accountant has been holding up really well, and there's a few other new movies. It may be pushing close to all-time records for a 4-day Memorial Weekend here. So let's track that. It's going to be a lot of fun to track. I had started to say maybe we'd push 3 billion. I found a couple of things I wanted to correct in my forecast, so I really apologize, guys. I'm tracking more like 2.9 again. Forgive me on that one, but 2.9 billion is still an amazing, amazing number. We're still talking about a shot at $100 million bottom line profits for AMC, and perhaps all-time records for Memorial Weekend. So this is just awesome. I would track Box Office Pro if you guys are in AMC and you're not already. They put out some fun information. And then, so let's just look at the chart a little bit. This is a 3-month view, as you can see, just from my phone. And, this is not where I do charting. I think I've told you guys before, Weeble's not my broker. This is not where I do charting. This is just easy to pull it up on the phone, and I scribbled with my finger on the screen, right? But you can just see that shape, and that's a 3-month cup and handle, basically. I didn't do real analysis. I'm not a TA guy, so if you look at that, you say, oh, it's not technically confirming a cup and handle, whatever. But the point is, it's sort of cuppy handly, if I could call it that. So there you go, a real TA term. And think about that setup at a time when I just told you we may be kind of looking at all-time records for Memorial Weekend. We're looking at a $2.9 billion box office quarter for the domestic box office, which is by far, it's like almost $300 million than our biggest quarter yet as an ape era, let's call it. And I have told you significant profits, probably all 3 of the final quarters of this year. So the entire last 9 months is heavy into profits for AMC. Adam and Sean have said we're heavy into positive cash flows. I'm kind of covering these things here, guys. So just think about this chart setup while we're moving into our period of profits. We're moving it into our period of cash flows. It's the industry turnaround that's here. We're heavily shorted. There's various tickers that are flipping to the wrong side for the shorts. I just showed you Metaplanet, heaviest shorted stock in Japan, and yet Bitcoin is running like crazy. Are we setting a record from Memorial Weekend? So there is just a lot to like about AMC. And again, check out that, the Great Unwinding playlist, because I think it will help you continue to connect why I believe Bitcoin is a battering ram that is clearing the way for AMC and GameStop. And you know that I believe we will win. So let's go.